wrote me a little guide to keep me focused. Can everyone hear me okay? So, hi, I'm Devin. I don't know if you guys have met me or not. I tried to make it over to this side of the room a little bit today because technically I stay over here a little bit more. Um, but a few weeks ago, uh, Tim was up here and he was saying, about getting more involved in church. And I have two kids, so unfortunately my schedule's a little busy. And I've told my story to a lot of my friends personally a lot. So I've talked about this a lot, but I've never talked about it in this way. So I felt that maybe I could reach out in a different way and kind of give my story um, to you guys to hopefully help anyone in the crowd that might need it from multiple walks of life. So this is going to be a fast version of it. We are in a time limit, and I'm trying to be respectful of that time limit, so everything will be kind of a little bit more quick and to the point. I will also be doing my very best to censor my language because some of the stuff that I'm going to talk about is very upsetting for others. Um, and I don't want anyone to be too upset. And I do want to welcome anyone in the congregation. If you have questions about any of this, any topic, anything, whether it's clarity, whether it's what really happened in detail, I am fully comfortable talking about this. I would just prefer to do it in a more private setting so that those who don't want to hear about this type of stuff don't have to. And while I'm not a fan of a trigger warning, I will be giving a trigger warning, just going over some of the stuff that we will be discussing. So if anyone would like to read the room or leave the room or wants to know what's going to be talked about, they do have forewarning. So my trigger warning for today is going to be that this will involve drug abuse, child abuse, sexual assault, and forms of self-harm and Satanism. So I wanted to start off by talking about my early life. My parents were married and divorced before I was born. If you take both of their stories and put them together, you find out that I am a conception of passion, which is great because I'm still here. They kept me. But they weren't together. My parents have been separated since before like I was little. I don't remember the court proceedings. My mom won custody. And as you guys are probably going to find out here, it's a little surprising because she was a drug addict. The California court system did not pull through for me in the way that it should have. But they both loved me very much. My father stuck around, and I had great grandparents who were both involved in church, even here in Lodi at a young age. I actually used to volunteer at Salvation Army with my grandmother and went to St. Paul's Lutheran Church with my other grandmother. So I was involved in church at an early age. Um, I was not a church kid, though. I was a kid that went to church. So when you see kids at church, sometimes you'll see kids where they go to church. Like my kids, they're talking about church outside of church. Like, oh, I can't wait to go. I love it. I was just kind of like, well, grandma makes me go, so I'm going to go. Um, but there's nothing wrong with that. It's good to have your kids in church. And the volunteer work that I did with my grandparents at that time through their involvement in church was very good for me. We used to do a lot of praying with elderly at old folks home. A lot of those people didn't have any family visiting them. And so just being able to be there and touch base with them and God and put God in their hearts was such a great experience for me. But unfortunately, whenever your parents are divorced and one of them is a drug addict, you are put into bad situations. And throughout a vast majority of my young childhood, I grew up in my mom's, I guess they'd call it a trap house nowadays. And at that trap house, at around the age of 5, I was sexually assaulted by my mom's drug dealer's son. He himself was a minor and was sexually assaulted by someone in his life. I didn't find that out until years later, and I don't say that to justify his actions, just to explain where they might have come from. This went on persistently for an unknown amount of time, but I would have to guess at least a month, and I do have multiple memories of the incidents, including a group sexual assault with multiple neighborhood kids. Um, I'm not sure exactly whenever we were found out, but we were eventually found out, and when we were, very violent action was taken against this person. The law was involved, and I lied to them, very openly lied to them. I did not want to be taken from my mother. I was afraid of what would happen. And I kind of repressed it. I remember being in that same house at some time later and asking my mom why I couldn't go back to the other young kid's room, and her very upsettedly saying that I'm just not allowed and not really getting an explanation. I think at that point she had realized that I had blocked out the bad that had happened at that time and didn't understand. It was just another younger kid that I wanted to play with. From about that age up until I was about 10, my mother was in and out of rehab, and because she had won custody, I had gone with her. I've lived at Meadows Depot. I don't know if it's a recovery-based place. Men are not allowed on the campus. Once you become the age of, I believe, like 16 to 18, you have to leave if you're a young man. Lived there, met many people who were in substantially worse situations than myself. And probably around 10, though, I don't know exactly what did this, but while living in and out of those situations, I met some of my best friends and I'd say probably, I said 10, but I should rephrase, probably around 12 to 13. This would be about the end of sixth grade, my entry into middle school. I gave up on God. And not only did I give up on God, but I embraced Satan. And like I worshiped the devil as a sixth grader. Drew pentagrams, pentacles, satanic crosses, anything that I could find that was against God because I had felt like God had abandoned me. And at that point, I had no one to turn to. My family had been out of the church. Every rehab facility I'd gone to, I'd seen people who had fallen on God and God had failed them, in my opinion. I didn't have some of the great resources that I found here of people to talk to come to. Whenever I embraced Satanism, even at 12 to 13 years old, I engaged in self-harm, blasphemy, and my friends would play these things called torture games. We'd go spend the night at their house, and after the parents went to sleep, we'd get things like drumsticks, pieces of wood, our fists, and we'd beat the living stuff out of each other. I bring up this story to say, just to be clear, that my parents did not know about this and by no means endorsed this. I remember one time coming home from one of these events and changing my clothes. I don't know if I was getting into pajamas or something like that, and my dad seeing softball-sized welts all over my back. This is from being beaten for hours with drumsticks, playing one of these torture games for the devil, in case you were wondering. And being confronted on it and being asked what happened and me making up some stupid excuse that, oh, me and the boys were just roughhousing and I fell on my back and got hurt. I hit some rocks or something. And you could tell that obviously he didn't believe that, but what is he didn't know. He had no idea what was going on. So I just want to be clear that my parents were by no means endorsing this or a part of this. By 15, I had started drinking and regularly practicing rituals with my friends. By this time, I had probably converted 4 or 5 of my friends away from any sort of godly love into some form of atheism or Satanism themselves. I had about 3 or 4 people that followed me around and spread hate. That's through rhetoric, whether it be racist, generally hateful, anti-religious. And one thing I'll point is, like, in retrospect, we didn't really mess with the Hindus or the Muslims or the spiritualists. We really only targeted the Christians. And I can tell you now that I firmly believe that is because there's only one real God out there. You don't, as a Satanist, you'll see this a lot too on YouTube. As a Satanist, you don't see them coming up to the Muslims and bashing them. And that's purposeful. And that's, when we get real technical, I think they worship Baal. But that's just my opinion from what I've studied. With that being said, at 18, I had moved to Washington State with one of my buddies who was a Satanist himself, someone who I had converted, who was playing these torture games with me, would do satanic rituals, self-harm, all that stuff, and continued to live wrong out there, starting fights, becoming a full-fledged alcoholic, eventually getting to a point where I was living in a garage and essentially had to tuck my tail and beg my family to come pick me up from Washington. At that point, I gave up alcohol and, in reflection, decided to give up the Satanism. I wasn't a movie star. I wasn't in Hollywood. My life had gotten drastically worse over this period of time. All the stuff that I was promised and told and had believed in had turned out to be completely false, and I was living proof of it. So I gave up on alcohol and I gave up on the devil, but I hadn't found God yet. But I did find my future wife. And through her and her spirituality, she had a friend who was very naturalistically spiritual. She was Native American, but she was a deep believer in Jesus Christ and would always accept his divinity and would preach about him to us and say that, while she believed in Father Sky and Mother Earth, that Jesus Christ was her Lord and Savior and the one true way to the kingdom. And I was actually given an exorcism by her. A lot of people say, well, what happened? I blacked out. I can't really tell you. But for the 3 or 4 witnesses, according to them, I was started off in a sitting position on the ground, and so for me, I was on a sitting position on the ground. When I woke up, I was standing up, and people were holding me, like arms out. And according to them, the exorcism ritual had started. My eyes had rolled in the back of my head. I had said some stuff. Again, this is years ago now, so I don't have exact recollection, and I really don't remember. This is just what I was told. I had eventually stood up, at some point levitating off the ground. The exorcism was complete. I didn't fall to the ground, just kind of stood, and then I came to. I felt lighter than I've ever felt. I could feel this dark like cloak of energy that was wrapped around me, almost like it was entangled in my veins, being removed and being gone. And a lot of you people were like, well, oh, this is the part where he goes to Jesus. No, I was super hard headed. I was like, well, that's cool. That worked. And it's kind of funny, again, looking back at it and talking about it here, is that like a lot of times whenever I was like a devout Satanist and my friends who were not would come to me and ask about demons and like how to get rid of them. And they'd be like, this is plaguing me. How do I get rid of it? I'd be like, well, pray about it and go to your pastor. I could never figure out. It's like, why do I always tell them to go to their pastor? It's because that's the way to rid yourself of that. Only through Jesus Christ can you rid yourself of that. There are things that will scare demons away. There are things that will make demons hide. There are demons that will play with you to make you think that they're gone or that they're hidden. But the only thing to truly rid you from a demon, from a possession, from an evil spirit, I'm going to tell you now, is the Lord Jesus Christ. I have not heard, found, or seen anything that can go against that truth personally. By the age of 20, my wife was pregnant. By 21, we were married and we had a kid. We'd moved to South Carolina. We had our own place. We're living together. It's probably some of the best times of my life. It's very hard, but it was also amazing. Around COVID, when I was 25 to 26, we kind of found out that if you talk with enough Christians, you'll find this concept of equal yoking, and that's very important. And as someone who was secular at the time, I didn't really understand why that was important. And that's important because as you go along in your marriage and in your relationship, you're going to have diametrical differences, and you have to be able to reconcile those. And that's why Christians typically use the term equal yoking to find someone who you're going to find less of those diametrical oppositions, because those diametrical oppositions can hurt your marriage. And especially in a marriage that doesn't have Christ or a foundation of love in God, it is a lot easier for that marriage to fall apart. And I don't think a lot of secular couples realize that. This is something I realized going through my separation with my wife. We do co-parent though, so there's it's not all bad. We both ended up moving back to Cali because of situations in South Carolina. And from there, we just kind of lived co-parenting. I did kind of start declaring myself as an atheist at this point. A lot of people, they go, well, you were a Christian, and then you were like a Satanist, and then you were like secular, and now you're an atheist. Like, what's going on? So I just kind of just lying to myself. I was kind of just saying like the stuff that I knew had happened. Like I must have been hallucinating. I must have been tripping out. I must have been making it up. I was a little kid. What did I know? Like I probably just saw some stuff, overactive imagination. But I'm here to tell you now that I was lying, and that was not true. That I did experience the things I experienced, that the devil was walking in my life, that I was possessed by demons, that I have seen crazy things. And like I said, if you're curious about those, please ask. I would be happy to tell you about some of the things that I've seen in my darkest moments. It's all real. It's all real. And the only thing that saved me from that was Jesus. So now I want to talk about what brought me back to Christ and the church. And there's two main things that brought me here. One is my son, and two is the death of Charlie Kirk. So I'll start with my son. My son brought me back because for the past few years, he's actually been a Christian. I've never forced him to be a Christian. I've never asked him to take Jesus into his life. He doesn't have any family members that are overtly Christian that have forced him to go to church. We've very much only brought him to church in the sense of like an Easter Sunday with grandma and grandpa and stuff like that. But he just started telling me, I believe in Jesus. I believe in Christ. He's my savior. And I was just kind of like, that's great, bud. Like as an atheist, I was like, that's cool. Like whatever, And so with the assassination of Charlie Kirk, it kind of gave us an excuse to come back to church. And I'd seen on Facebook, and I believe it was possibly posted incorrectly, that there would be a visual specifically for Charlie Kirk here. And so that's what drew my attention. And so I was like, well, hey, bud, like, you want to go see what church is like? This might be a good example and see how you feel about it. And he's like, yeah, sure. And so I think like maybe a couple days later it was updated, and it was like, well, it's not just Charlie Kirk. We're going to pray for everybody. And I was like, oh, man, okay, well, whatever, right? My little in is out, but we can still go and support it. And so I asked my son, I said, do you want to go? Like, I really think this would be a good experience for you to have with church. And he said, yes, I do. So we went, and he had an amazing time. He had a great time. I remember probably my first conversation with Tara and Tim about my faith was, I'm an atheist and I'm not changing my position. I'm just here to watch peacefully in the back. I'm I'm not going to become a Christian by the end of this. And I think the exact words, it was like, well, what's the worst that could happen? I find God. I guess the worst thing happened, huh? So whenever Charlie Kirk was assassinated, I was at work, and I remember getting a text saying, he's dead, man, they killed him. They killed Charlie Kirk. And I was like, what? What? You know? Come on now. Like, he wears a vest, you know, he has protection, he has security. And I got a video clip, and I got sent the clip, and I went to the back of the warehouse where I work, and I opened it, and watched it, and I remember sitting down, and for the first time in 5 years, I prayed to God. I said, God, please don't take him. Shouldn't be him, and that just if there's anybody that he was going to have some divine intervention, if there's anybody he was going to save, that if I could advocate for anybody, it would be for Charlie Kirk in that moment. And I wiped my tears, and I went back to work, and that's what brought us to the prayer vigil, and that's what brought us back to church. And so I've thought about that a lot, and I know it hurt a lot of people, and I think a lot of people can echo my sentiment whenever we say that we did not want it to be him. But then I think about how many people just like me walked right back into church, and how many souls just like mine are now saved because of that. You know, God uses his martyrs in ways that we can't understand to work miracles. And I see a revival across this nation, whether it be my generation, the younger generation, people who have been away from Christ and the Lord for many years. That assassination put evil at the forefront, and I think it kind of ripped the mask off of the illusions that have been in front of us. And so, as much as it hurts me that he's gone, I'm thankful that it brought me back, and started that journey. And I can say my time's getting short. So, and now I'm losing the words. That put me in the situation to be here and to come back to church. And through that, it gave me a chance to pray to God seriously and ask him to come into my life. And just through coming to church and seeing little things in my life go a certain way, I kind of got to a point where I said, well, I can't really just say this is the universe anymore. And I asked Pastor Tim to pray with me. I said, I just want to have a sincere prayer that God, if he's out there and he wants me to come back, would come into my life, would touch my life, and would show himself to me in a way that I can understand. And that is exactly what happened. I can say that over the course of that next week, whether it was podcast, music, experiences, understandings, it was all made clear. Things that I would have argued with you a week before, I had now understood. And I couldn't explain it. I couldn't explain why the videos I watched had come to me. I couldn't explain why my heart had been softened. I couldn't explain why I almost broke down at work over these feelings. And so I said, why can I not be a Christian? What is holding me back? What is holding me back from this? And I said, I know what it is. It's the divinity of Christ. That's what it is. That's where my contention is. I don't deny that Jesus walked the earth. I don't deny that he was a person who had followers. I deny that he's the Son of God, and I deny the miracles. I said, so what can God do in my life right now, being way up in heaven with Jesus not walking the earth? What can he do to show me his glory, his grace, his mercy? What do I need? And something I've been struggling with, and I've struggled with this for a long time, is suicidal thoughts. Very, very deep, very dark suicidal thoughts. Even days before this, going home, train passing, and I'm like, man, I could just, right there, it'd be instant, it'd be done. And so in that moment, I said, God, I don't really know how this works. I'm new to coming back to Christianity, but if you're real and you want me to embrace you, please heal me of this. Just heal me of these thoughts and these feelings. Just make them go away. And the second that I realize it, I will embrace you. I will no longer deny your miracles. I will accept you on faith and faith alone. And the next day I was cured. And I haven't felt that depression since. I don't say that to say that if you pray to God about your depression, that he will instantly heal you, or that I will never have a bad day again. I say that to say that now I have a new way to solve my depression. That now, whenever I am in that darkness, that I have a new light to lean on. And you can lean on it too, because this is not just for me. This is for everybody. So after experiencing that and other things, again, feel free to ask about it. A couple weeks ago, they had said that stuff about being involved in church, and like I said, I would like to volunteer, whether it be with the youth group or some other thing, but I just don't have the availability. And so I had talked to Marvin about giving my testimony, and he said, well, let's run it by Tim, and let's see what we can get done. So in that time, I was praying about it, like, why am I praying? What's my message going to be? Like, why am I going to come up here and say this? Like, why am I going to end this? What's my closing, right? And so this is what we'll close on. As I was praying to God, I said, God, I need some guidance. Like, I just need something to tell me I'm doing this right. And a lot of times, especially as an atheist or agnostic, or maybe even as a Christian, we struggle with this. It's like, well, I prayed for God to come in my life, and he didn't, there was a burning bush. Where's my burning bush? And so, like, I tell this story to say that, like, when I prayed to God and asked him to come to me, like, and I walked in my bathroom and I got my response, and I didn't sit on my toilet and my towel caught on fire, and God spoke to me and said, Devin, tell this message. That's not what happened, okay? What happened was I prayed to God. I felt the urge to go to the restroom. Sorry for TMI. I sat on the restroom. I pulled my phone out, and I got a notification from my U Bible app, and it was my verse of the day. And so this is my verse of the day immediately after praying for word from God to let me know that I was on the right path, to give me guidance in what my message is. And what God said to me was Romans 5, verses 3 through 4, English Standard Version. Not only that, but we rejoice in our suffering, knowing that suffering produces endurance, and endurance produces character, and character produces hope. So what is my message? My message is a message of hope, that no matter how far you fall from God, no matter how far you feel separated, that God always has that door open for you and is waiting for you to come back in. So please, if you are not a follower of Christ, consider it, pray about it, and when you pray about it sincerely. Thank you for you guys' time. Thank you, Tim.